Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Hamilton Report. It's unbelievable, but today is the last day of January. Remember when we were talking in November and um, I'm sorry, I was getting three different sounds of my voice in my head. Now I'm back to one, which I think is better. What I was saying is in November and early December, we talked about how we were going to be into a new election year in just a few weeks and the time was going to move quickly. Well, friends, we are already done with January, which means we have even more work to do and even less time to do it. And there's no one I would rather visit with about this, the importance of all of us working together to make positive change in Oklahoma than my friend, the chair of the Oklahoma Democratic Party, and my boss, Alicia Andrews. Alicia, this has been a crazy day for you, and I really appreciate you jumping in to be with us this evening.
Hey, Scott. Hi, Democrats.
You know, it's been fascinating to me, fascinating and infuriating at the same time to try to keep up with all of the bills for this session. Combing through them, they range from such positive things like eliminating taxes on groceries to things that like skipping the FDA and just making the state choose that we're going to make horse warmer just fine for people over the counter. So that's what we've been dealing with. And you were away last week, and it got even worse last week because more things came to light. So now that we are this close to the legislative session, which of course moves us closer to election time, what are some things that you are particularly concerned about right now, Alicia?
So, on my live today, I talked about Chairman Harrison, making the statement that our goal is to upend the party of fraud, fear, and fascism. And, I said earlier that it spoke to me. He was talking about the DNC, but it spoke to me as the ODP because what's happening in our state, while they decry the federal laws imposing on the state level, they are trying to pass bills. They are submitting bills that are overstating their power. Just like you said, skipping the FDA to make ivermectin and hydrochloroquine over the counter. This weekend, I had an opportunity to speak with a physician who I said, are we trying to make things easier for folks with autoimmune conditions? Because that's who needs hydrochloroquine. And what that physician said to me, he said, no, folks with autoimmune disorders need prescriptions. They need to see a doctor and get the right medicine. And so this isn't even the right move. We know it's not the right move for COVID, but it's not the right move for anyone, except if I am trying to grab headlines, if I'm trying to get attention, and if I'm trying to pretend like COVID isn't real. My concern is we're putting up bills that exceed the reach of the state legislature.
And we know that going in. So, for example, when you write a bill that says that this will supersede federal law, it doesn't work that way. And I would think most seventh graders could tell you that it doesn't work that way. And yet we have, I love your term, performative legislation, where that's all this is about. It's about grabbing headlines. It's about trying to bolster their number of clicks on social media. But the reality is
that's exactly the reality, right? Because they have such a super majority, they have time and they feel like they have the leeway to submit performative legislation. It's just performative. It's to get eyeballs, to get clicks, to get headlines, when really Oklahoma has some real issues. My big one is a fourth of Oklahomans don't have access to reliable broadband. And the more that we are working remotely, educating remotely, that becomes a big dividing line between the haves and the have-nots. And Oklahoma needs to not be creating more have-nots.
And one of the things that we discussed last week, we did an in-depth look at some of the legislative bills that are proposed dealing with education. And it was very apparent to me that the three things that we strive for every day, which is quality education for all people, good quality, affordable health care for all people, and finally, economic opportunity. All of these are wrapped up in education. And so when we start to break down our education system, then that lays the groundwork for a lifetime of challenges for our children as they grow.
Yeah,
So
they are all very, very intertwined, right? And education is the great divider, right? It is the equalizer. If we can get a quality, affordable quality education, it gives you more opportunity for economic growth. But if we tear down education, we're also in a cycle tearing down economic opportunity. If we tear down healthcare, or we keep healthcare being financially out of the reach for the masses, no for economic growth. And so they are all very, very intertwined. And this push to privatize education, and let's make no mistake that is what we're doing. It's cynical and depressing because we all know that the private schools aren't going to take all students. So what happens if we privatize all education to those students who don't have access to the resources?
well,
Do
it
we
means
just relegate them to poverty?
that's right. That's exactly what it does. When we're at a place in time in Oklahoma that we could either be staring into the near term future with a great deal of enthusiasm or with deep uncertainty. And like you, I think just about everyone I talk to, they're very concerned. But it's not enough to be concerned. It's not enough to wish and hope and think and pray. There's got to be some action behind that, or this kind of dumb legislation will actually be signed into law by a governor that really isn't concerned about being a governor.
We have to not agonize, but we have to mobilize, right? Hope is not enough without action. I hope that we can turn our state around, but it doesn't do me any good to hope if I don't also mobilize voters and get folks to turn out and make sure that I get the message out of why it's important to vote and who's eligible to vote. And explain that voting is how we change the trajectory of our state. It's we could all be at home wringing our hands, but wringing our hands doesn't change anything.
No, it doesn't.
We've got to not only vote, but we've got to make it so other people can vote. And we have to, if we're not going to be the candidate, we have to find a candidate and support a candidate.
Well, you have been working tirelessly in candidate recruitment for months now. And I have to say, I'm really impressed with the quality of candidates that we have up and down the ticket. But we're not done with candidate recruitment. Filing isn't until April. The deadline is April 21st or 22nd.
April 15th.
Sorry, thank you, April 15th. Wow, that's coming even quicker. So
no, we have 2.5. We're exactly at the 2.5 month mark.
Okay. So one of the things that you do is say, if you want to be a candidate, call me. But I think that's kind of like, yeah, I'd like to go to the moon too, but I don't know how to do that. So
and
where
that's
do we
why
start?
I encourage people to call me. And I am pretty accessible. If you don't know me, you know somebody who knows me. Right? It's that simple. If you don't know me, you know somebody who knows me. And I will happily walk you through the process of what it takes to run for office, what the steps are. I mean, just, A, do you qualify? B, what does it take? How do you set up a candidate? How do you set up a candidate bank account? And how do you start raising funds and keep yourself out of jail? How do you, find a consultant to help you? I am here and ready to help walk folks through that process because our elected officials are regular people who just want to make a difference. And so don't be at home thinking, oh, I'm not qualified to be a candidate, or nobody would vote for us. Our elected officials are regular folks who heard the call and stood up.
Something that always sticks out for me, Alicia, is when we look at municipal races, especially, oftentimes those races are decided by just a handful of votes. And um, when people tell me, I've given up on voting because nothing changes. That's not, we can't be in that camp. We have
A
got to
lot of
say,
times, city council races and city council and school board are the elected officials that affect your life the most because they live the closest to you. A lot of times those races are determined by less than 5,000 votes. And so when people say, and they say it to me all the time because of, the position I find myself in, they say my vote doesn't count. And my answer is always because you didn't cast it.
mm,
Because you didn't cast it. When it comes down to 3,000, 5,000 votes, every single vote matters. I remember in recent history, a state Senate race that was decided on 29 votes.
29 votes.
29 votes.
That's
Every
more
vote
than
matters.
the number of people that live on my block.
Exactly. 29 votes was the deciding factor of whether that Democrat won or didn't win. Fortunately, she won, but it was 29 votes. Every single vote counts, particularly in the local races, your school board, your city council, your county commission. County commissioners determine the budget for your county, the
Yeah.
roads, the bridges, the budget for your county. And those races are determined on so few votes. It's shameful. Everybody is very concentrated on the presidential election and the mayor election, and those are governor's race. Those are very important races. But they're so far removed from your day to day. City council, school board, that affects you every day.
Mm-hmm. And like you've said this before, and I think it's really well noted that your school board officials, um, your city commissioners, these are people that travel the exact same roads you do. They look at the same weary vegetables in the supermarket that you look at. So these are people who are living
That's
right
exactly
there
right.
in your realm.
City council, they live in your neighborhood. They live very close to you. So they are driving the same roads. And so that pothole that you're really mad about that you drive by at work, likely they're driving by that same pothole. The grocery store being out of bread, the moment that we hear that it might snow one day, affects them as well. They don't have a special bread store for city councilors. They're at the same place that you're at. And so those are the people that affect you every day because they're affected by the same thing that you are. And the fact that 3,000 people pick them, that 5,000 people pick them, you actually have a say in that race. And that race is coming up. The elections, the early in-person elections are this weekend. The in-person, election day is next Tuesday.
Yes. And that's the first of many elections this year. You did something today on your live broadcast that was, to me, it was a major step because you have been steadfast in pointing out the foibles of the temporary resident of the governor's mansion. You have been steadfast in showing all the boneheaded things that he has done and is doing. And today you said flat out, it's time we have a new governor. He's got to go. You didn't mince words at all, and I was really proud to hear that because even today he posted that he was meeting with Secretary of Transportation Buttigieg to make sure that Oklahoma gets our fair share. And I responded to his tweet saying, if you really cared about Oklahoma getting our fair share, talk to our congressional representatives who all voted against the interest of Oklahomans. So no, you're not a hero because you're at the governor's conference.
Now, Scott, are you talking about the same roads that his press secretary said that those who didn't like him could take and leave the state? Those
You know,
roads?
I am. As a matter of fact, I'm going to ask that we pull that up now because this was the height to me of don't care.
Disrespect?
Yeah, absolutely disrespect and don't care about Oklahomans. Look at this. We are the worst state, number one worst state to live in because of COVID and our lack of response to it. Number one. And here her suggestion is, oh, you don't like it? Take Route 66 and go to LA or Chicago. That is shameful. And
Well, I mean, the leader of our state is saying, if you don't like it, because she's his mouthpiece.
that's right.
And if he saw it and didn't like it, I have no doubt that he would have told her to take it down,
Yep.
issue an apology, but he did not. The leader of our state is saying, yeah, I mean, so what? They say that we're the most dangerous state. You don't like it, leave.
Yeah.
I don't think it's his job. I don't think it's his job to send people out of state.
Well, let's
Well, I
look at
guess
the
if you
people
do
who are
that, you don't have to
leaving.
worry about healthcare and education.
That's exactly true because we're losing teachers, we're losing medical professionals, we're losing young educated people, skilled workers. They're getting on those roads and they're heading out of here because of leaders or lack of leadership, I should say, by people like him. And it's been fascinating to me that he has not once called upon his party to pull back on the nonsensical legislation. If anything, he's fanning the fires. And it's time. It's time for him to say, okay, I checked this one off. I voted for a governor once, and that was for myself. And so now I can go play in
Now I
another
can go run
sandbox.
for president or whatever his ambition is.
Yeah.
But he is not focused on the welfare of Oklahoma citizens. He's proven that by wasting our money on countless lawsuits that truly aren't in the interest of helping Oklahoma. You know, the countless lawsuits, the random, trips to wherever that don't come back as a result of promoting Oklahoma. Um, the letting the 12,000 Oklahoman souls die because of COVID. He is not looking out for our well-being. And so I will, I said it a couple of hours ago and I'm going to say it one more time. This governor has had enough time being the governor. He has to go. We must band together as Oklahomans, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, and Libertarians. We must band together and send him home. This need not be our governor this time next year. He does not want the job. He is not doing the job. And wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great if we had a governor who recognized that his job was to take care of us?
It sure would. It sure would. I visit with Democrats who are elected officials, and sometimes it's painful listening to them because there is so much in their hearts for the people of Oklahoma. I mean, these people are sacrificing so much of themselves to serve the public, and the level of empathy and caring and understanding is so strong. And it would be hard to go to work every day and have to look at that door that has his name on it at the Capitol. So, yeah.
Well, there's that, but they are also up against a majority party legislature that are also not concerned about passing legislation that actually serves Oklahomans. You talked about, Representative Emily Virgin's bill to eliminate tax on groceries. That helps us. Let's see
Yes.
where that goes. I know that Senator Young is going to have a bill to raise minimum wage again this cycle. That helps us. Let's see if that ever gets any traction. But
Yeah.
will we have many, many conversations about the new places that we need to be able to take guns? We absolutely will have those conversations. Will we have abortion regulation bills disguised as pro-life bills? We absolutely will. Will we have, bills aimed at restricting voter rights, voter access, we absolutely will. And will they get discussed? We absolutely will. They're no longer focused on what is right for Oklahomans, because voting rights are not just for Democrats. I want everybody to be able to vote, right? Um,
Yes.
I want everybody
That's
to
not a
have
hard concept, Alicia. Why? I mean, everybody benefits.
everybody benefits. Everybody benefits.
One of our viewers has a statement, um, and she has or says that we need young voters to step up and vote. Okay, let's look at what it takes to make that happen. How do we involve younger people in politics?
I have
Go
a
ahead.
so I want to say this to Alicia Kelly Sullivan, great name. I want to say this: we need young folks to vote. There's actually a bill that has been submitted that is trying to make sure that student ID is not a viable form of identification for voting, but that your gun license is. And so, again, we need to be focused on how do we expand the number of people who can have a voice in the process, and expand and make sure that we. It's different from when I was 16. When I was 16, everybody I know who turned 16 was waiting in line to get their driver's license. It was a rite of passage. And anybody who didn't get their driver's license on their birthday, it was a big deal and a big source of shame. And I know 20-year-olds who still don't drive deliberately, not because they couldn't get a license, but they deliberately don't drive. And so they're in college, and that ID says that they are who they are, and they pay their tuition, and they are a citizen. Why can't we use that to give them access to the ballot box?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's when we talk about discouraging people from voting or putting up roadblocks to voting, it, that's that's something that can easily just slide right under the radar. But how many young people will that impact? Thousands and thousands of Oklahomans.
If we put up those barriers early and we discourage folks from voting early on, it takes longer to get them back into the process of voting. I mean, I guess we could ask the governor what discouraged him from voting until he was in his 40s. So we get an idea there. But if there's a barrier early, it it takes longer for them to get into the habit of voting regularly. We need more young people to step up, but we need to give them something to vote for and someone to vote for. I have conversations with young people all the time. So I'm going to get back on my soapbox and beg you to become a candidate or help me find a candidate so that young people feel like they have a reason to show up at the ballot box.
So someone who will carry their voice and their concerns.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we have a number of young people who are very involved in the party and just so committed to seeing positive change for Oklahoma. And what worries me is, frankly, that these are young people with good educations, good skill sets. They're people with really good worldviews and outlooks for the future. And if they continue to live in an oppressive environment, they're not going to stay here long. And so the more involved we can make them from early on. And we should say, anyone that's 17 and a half years old can register to vote.
Right now, as
Yeah.
long as you will be 18 by November 8th, you can register to vote right now.
And
So if you're thinking
that's what
about
we
it,
got to do.
go out to okdemocrats.org/register to vote, fill out the form, and the form will be mailed to your house, where you mark your party affiliation, sign your name, and your card will be mailed to your home.
Very
Free.
simple. And you don't have to leave your house.
Absolutely.
Before we get away from that for a moment, I had a conversation Friday with a woman who called the office, and she was deeply concerned about a proposed bill that would require every Oklahoman to re-register to vote next year, and that they would have to have all the credentials to get a real ID. And she said, I was born in a little town that doesn't even exist anymore. I have no idea how I could find a birth certificate. She said, and I don't drive. I'm disabled and I live at home by myself. And so they just really don't want me to vote, do they?
100%. That is the answer.
Yeah.
This is to disenfranchise would-be voters. Mm-hmm. I'm going to put up one more barrier, because there are people, I know a legislator that I had a conversation with a month ago that, moved back to Oklahoma and registered to vote 20 years ago and hadn't even considered looking at their voters registration because they vote every time. So they weren't in fear of being purged. But because they didn't provide their driver's license number 20 years ago when it wasn't mandatory, there was a flag on their voter record. We just keep adding more obstacles and more hurdles to the ballot box. And this making everybody re-register in 2023, there is no logical reason for that, except that he hopes that it will erase more people from the ballot, from the rolls. He hopes that it will reduce the amount of eligible voters. And I say he because the legislator that put that bill up is a male. He hopes to reduce the amount of people who are participating in the process. Full stop. There is no other explanation.
Alicia, we're just about out of time for tonight, but I'd like to take these last couple of minutes and have you speak to what you're hopeful for this session.
So I live in hope. And sometimes it's kind of hard to come by in Oklahoma because of who leads our state. But I live in hope. I get up every day. It's the thing that keeps me motivated. And what I hope for this election cycle is that more people become involved and engaged in the process. It sounds corny, and I wish I had something deep and profound. My philosophy. I want everyone to have access to the ballot box, be educated when they get there, and know that their vote's going to count. And we need all of us need to go out and make sure that we find more folks to get involved in the process and find more folks to educate. And to that end, the party has so many tools that will educate voters this cycle. I'm going to encourage people to go out and look. But I am hopeful that we register more people, that we bring some balance to our state legislature, and folks feel like they have a voice.
Well, that's a lot to be hopeful for, and I join with you in that. And that is one of the most beautiful things, I think, is when even in the face of adversity, we still all of us can work together for positive change with a spirit of hopefulness. So with that, Alicia, I want to thank you. I know it's been a full day, full weekend of work for you. So I really do appreciate you jumping in here and visiting with us this evening. And obviously, we'll have lots more to talk about. I want to remind our audience that Alicia is live every day at 4:15, Monday through Friday, on Facebook and YouTube. Do tune in because these are short broadcasts that are full of information, full of reminders, things that are just so important. And I'll tell you, this was your Chairs Daily Live was supposed to have been a 2-week trial run, I think, at the beginning of COVID, and then it extended. And every time that you have talked about pulling it back to maybe 2 or 3 a week, people are like, nope, you need to be on every day. So you are, and you do a good job. And I encourage our viewers to tune in tomorrow at 4:15 for the Chairs Daily Live. Alicia, thanks so much for being with us this evening.
Thanks for letting me join you.
Good night.
Good night.
Well, friends, you have spent a half an hour with us this evening, and that's an investment in your time. And I hope that it paid off for you tonight, because if we have nothing but hope, then that's enough, because the hope will encourage all of us to move forward, to make a difference, to move forward, to register more people to vote, to move forward in getting more people to be candidates, and finally to be able to change not just the environment in Oklahoma, but the entire trajectory of our state for our children and our grandchildren. That's all of our time for tonight. I hope that you will tune in again next week at 6:30 right here for the Hamilton Report. And from all of us at the Oklahoma Democratic Party, take good care of yourself, Stay warm this week as the weather changes, and I'll see you back here next week. Have a great evening. Good night.